Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft news. Oh boy, patch 8.3 is out, Anduin is getting reacquainted with his bad dragon, we've got a bunch of content to do, and thankfully, most of it kind of broke. There's some insane QC issues right now, such as the pillar of the patch, just not dropping gear for some people and eating some other people's currencies, which kind of puts them behind and seemingly GMs are not doing anything about it, so that's fun. This is going to be a thrill ride of an episode. To be honest, this whole affair has been extremely entertaining. I had the absolute time of my life last night as we collectively just lost our sanity, which is very on theme for the patch. Past that, though, we've got the cancellation of patch 8.3.5, cloak throttling for the upgrades, patch impressions, and a whole bunch more. First, though, a massive thanks to the patrons. Gotta be real, it's January. Ad revenues in half, sponsors kind of dry up around this time of the year, and the patrons are really keeping us going. This month's Master Tree reward is Dwarf. And yeah, the art team really outdid themselves on this one. And what's even better is we're doing another pin, and it's a hunter pin. It's all for 25 bucks. I would show you the pin, but right now it's actually mid-production, so I literally don't have it yet to show you. But hey, there's that. Patreon also has got our Complete History series' most recent episode, early access to content as soon as we make it, like our systems video that's up there, and their help is massively appreciated. So, with that, I hope you managed to get that 4th rare mob kill credit in Uldum, and let's get going. To open with, here is a quote. Due to the holiday break, we had a slightly longer PTR than we generally have for our updates. We've had a lot more feedback on things. Ian then went on to say, it's been incredibly useful getting feedback and bug reports throughout the PTR. Yeah, so that's what Ian said regarding patch 8.3. How did that one pan out? Well, Visions of N'Zoth was supposed to erode our sanity. I'm going to say mission accomplished. Last night, we could hardly breathe laughing at how things were going. Now, look, to be clear, it's not the time to be dicks to the devs. Being real, they are more troubled by this than anyone, so let's just have a laugh about how things went down, have a few dozen pints, relax, and carry on with our day. So, we'll start off with the main new feature. Horrific Visions, don't do them right now. Seemingly, they appear to have broken gear sometimes, and I can see why a lot of the Mythic raiding guilds have actually held back from doing them. So, as covered in our guide, Wowhead's guide, Methods guide, and more, Visions are supposed to drop gear. A 420 from the first boss, and then better and better quality gear each time you clear a vision with more objectives and masks. So I did a solo vision and I got a 420. I then did 2 runs with my guild, one with 2 objectives and one with 1 objective, and there was no loot. Now, was this a hotfix from the PTR? Was this a change? Well, I checked in with Wowhead, and their guide writer reported back yesterday, and yeah, they said that, the visions, they worked on live for them yesterday like they did in PTR. I then saw this post from Blizzard, which actually confirms the PTR behavior as reported in our guide. So, what's our conclusion here? Well, Visions are seemingly not dropping gear for some people. Now, the problem here is if they refund the currency to us, then we'll get ahead of the curve on our cloak upgrade because we did get that currency. So, as it stands, I think we're just going to be behind on gear. Now, there's also a design oversight here that's funny, and it's something you don't want to get hit by. So, if you do your first Black Empire assault, you get a vessel, and then later on, Rathian introduces you to your first Horrific Vision. Now, part of that quest asks you to purchase a vessel from him. Now, most people would assume, well, I've already got a vessel, so they would have just went and did the vision. Now, the thing is, if you do that, you're not going to finish the quest, and you'll end up wasting 2 vessels, and you'll get 0 cloak upgrades, but you will have expended your vessel. So that's not really ideal. Do the problems end there, though? I mean, no. I had Magni bug out in Halls of Origination, so that was no progress for a while. Very fun. Game tooltips seemingly are a bit wrong. They're indicating that event rares contribute to the Kill 4 Rares daily quest. Do they? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, not for me. We've got mobs resetting, lots of inconsistencies. I mean, some click items despawn when one person clicks on them, others are shared. What are the rules? Nobody knows. Seemingly the devs don't even know what the rules there are. And I mean, man, I even saw someone be kicked from the game during a horrific vision. They posted about it. They were using their Demon Hunter abilities, which because of a years-old bug, can sometimes basically just exceed movement safety values and boot you from the game. That led to a failed vision run, and the GM was just like, yeah, can't do anything about it. Go about your day, have fun. Balance is another funny thing right now. Corrupted Gear's mad. Tier 1, 2, and 3 of, I think it's Infinite Stars, they give me 4.5 to 16.7k DPS, and right now that same one gives Arcane Mages between 4.5 and 28.6k deeps. That's a lot of deeps. I mean, I got rank 2 of Echoing Void. That gives me 6,200 DPS. And as for the other traits, just look at this screenshot. I mean, the numbers don't even level out that much when you do damage per corruption, so the balance there is confusing to say the least. Let's talk about other bugs. Lower and Upper Mechagon share a lockout for some reason. Glimmer does not work on self for Holy Paladins until you re-equip your gear. Some of the allied race quests are bugged. The transmog window was bugging for us. Nikki, our editor, had his war tables stop showing followers, and then both mine and his war tables just had all of their missions despawn. For reasons. There's literally a bug right now in the Black Empire campaign for some people where completing the assault seemingly doesn't tick off the thing, and then they just can't progress through the Black Empire campaign. We've also had mobs reset for really no reason. We've been locked in combat for ages doing visions, which has meant that we couldn't use the Sanity Orb until it was very much almost too late. The Auction House, which I think is actually really awesome, has apparently got some bugs, and then apparently both Twilight Devastation and Infinite Stars just aren't proccing for some people. In Visions, also, audio just went wild for two of our players, messing about with the left and right channels of the audio. Wild shenanigans are just going on everywhere, it seems. I mean, Nick, who I mentioned earlier, he made a GM ticket for our Vision loot issue, and when he did, the ticket estimated 1 day wait time. This morning, it estimates 2 days, so it seems like this patch's bugs are just overflowing Blizzard support staff, and it's not really going that well. And apparently it's also bugging out on MacBook Pros. I didn't experience that, but that's a thing. Oh, and on Corrupted Gear Balance, just to give you a taste of how this extrapolates out, players are doing 300k DPS to Mythic Lady Ashvane, and they're killing her before her first mechanic basically completes. They're getting 40-second clears of that boss with 300k deeps. Video game balance, it is absolutely occurring here. So with that, I mean, I think we do have to have a bit of a chat about how this happens. If you look at the PTR changes, they did loads of hotfixes pretty much right up till the final day. So Ian did say in that interview that the PTR was great, they had loads of time to iterate things and fix things, and they did in the core systems, but on actual quality assurance, a little bit less so. And I know that a lot of the raiders were pretty pissed off because Blizzard were asking for their time, to, come help us test our content, and then, the room would spawn upside down with N'Zoth, and then all the raiders would lose their time, which leads to, of course, people not turning up to boss testing because it's not really that fun. I mean, on the topic of boss testing, they were testing bosses up until the 13th of January. Patch launched on the 14th, so this one was clearly just down to the wire, and to be honest with you, I really wish they delayed it. I wish they delayed it for 2 weeks. I think that would have been a really good move for them to have made. I think it would have been disappointing to many people, but I think, just because it's a live game doesn't really mean it's an excuse to fix it later, and I think the launch day was really quite messy indeed. So you do just have to wonder what's going on at Blizz, and on that, to be honest with you, and as we'll cover in the 8.3.5 cancellation segment, their focus is in Shadowlands. And I mean, given how BFA has been, I think that is the correct option. I think that is the thing I want them to be doing. At the end of the day, you know what, this patch just tied people over for a little bit. Let's get it done. Let's put the focus on Shadowlands and have a bright future. I think that is absolutely the play to go for. It's what they went for. But it's unfortunate that seemingly whatever's going on there has led to lapsed QC issues. And to be fair, there have been just major QC issues for the entire expansion, right? That's unfortunate. I think it's clear that Blizzard need to do more work there. Of course, last year, 800 staff were given the boot, and from what I understand, QC teams were pretty much gutted, and I sort of heard from a little bit of an insider that that actually really hurt their ability to do QC, to do testing, especially on the raid side as well. So basically, what's the take here? I mean, yep, you fire 800 people, a bunch of them are your QC people. What a surprise! There is now less QC, and I think the real thing there is, it might end up being that that's just causing more work for the development team, and that's just going to slow the development team down. So I really do have to imagine that the devs are, very unhappy about this, and I can't imagine that, this is the plan, or this is what they ideally want. So yeah, an unfortunate situation. Hopefully it gets fixed pretty soon. Anyway, with that, let's talk about the initial experience of actually playing this patch. So let's kick it off with something that's actually good in this video, Visions. I love Visions. They are the best thing in this patch. We just had so much fun. It was great. There was stakes. We had to try. We had to learn new mechanics. It was really fun. Doing Thrall on his own. Okay, grand. Doing Thrall with one objective's mechanics added in. Also fun. With another objective's mechanics added in. Even more fun. That's a really cool system. I think that visions are the absolute best part of this patch, and the people at Blizzard who made those visions, I mean, pat on the back to them, they've done a standout job, and visions plus the raid are the sole reason why I am playing this patch. Now, that said, there is a bit of a downside. I would love to do visions in the same way that maybe I would have done, like you would have done a mage tower, right? It is a little bit unfortunate. You only get 3 entrance tickets a week. You get more in the first week, but after that, it's just 3 a week. And I think that's kind of unfortunate because they're going to take you from 5 to 15 minutes each. And that's just sad because this is the best content in the game and you really don't get to do it that much. So I think that bit's really unfortunate, but as a bit of content, visions are great. You know, I don't anticipate a massive amount of playtime coming from them just because they're really short. But yeah, I will keep on top of most of my, coalescing vision collection so that I can do the horrific visions because I genuinely think they're a great bit of content. So that stuff, that is brilliant. Next, though, there is the storyline. I've seen very mixed opinions on this one. I think that the actual story there is grand, and it probably could have been communicated in a bit of a faster way. There's some weird inconsistencies and quest pacing issues. And a lot of that comes down to the travel, because sometimes you'll be teleported about the place, but other times you'll have to fly, and that's kind of sometimes unfortunate because Blizzard also removed the, in 8.15, I believe, they removed a bunch of portals, which just kind of makes that a bit of a pain in the ass. Like, it would have been nice if we could have just used our portal to the Vale, but we sort of can't, so that's kind of frustrating, and just in general, fly all the way over to Uldum, go into the place, and just sort of fly back again. I mean, really, the hopping back and forth of the halls of origination, that can sometimes get a little bit frustrating. Now, as for the scenarios, I mean, to be honest with you, I think they lack teeth. They're mostly grand, though. I like the little puzzle that you do with Magni. I think things like that are good. That's where you really feel like you're playing a video game because you're just there, you're using your brain, you're kind of going through a dungeon. Pretty cool, right? But overall, a little bit of a meh, I would say. Definitely, I think this is a low-budget patch. I think they're really focused in Shadowlands, and I think it does actually show in that content. And as for the alts, well, it's not really an ideal situation for alts for sure, but hey, that's what we're dealing with. For me, though, it is something I can just grit my teeth and, do. I'm not playing alts in this patch, of course. I'll get onto that later, so it doesn't affect me that much, but I totally understand if you are someone who's an altaholic and, you maybe don't feel like doing that sort of 2-hour, hour-and-a-half bit of content, even with the skips, which really don't save you all that much time. I can understand how that would be a point of frustration. But yeah, overall, a simple story, pretty short, clearly a lot more low budget than Argus, but there you go, that's what it is. What about the assaults? I think the assaults are nothing special. I think they're very inoffensive. You just go there, you kill some lads, clicking some things, there you go, done. I think the only problem there is the daily quests. The daily quests themselves, I think, are fine in concept, but some of their objectives, it just feels like the pacing's not really right there. Basically, I feel like with the spawn rates and just some of the design of these assaults, they really could have just done with a few more passes, just to improve the pacing, because you end up just doing the assaults super quickly and then flying around in circles trying to find that last obelisk or that last rare mob, and I don't think that leads to a good player experience. Now, I think Blizzard's intent there is that while you're flying around for that final obelisk, you see a little icon in your map for an event and you go and you do the event, and that's kind of fair enough, but overall I think it just comes together to be very standard, not that interesting content that truly is just there to give you some resources to do the visions. I mean, really, if it wasn't for the visions, I probably wouldn't do the assaults. I'd probably just do the raid once or twice and not play the patch. But because of the visions and that progression system combined with the raid, this is a patch that I am going to be playing. I am going to get ahead of the curve in Azoth. That's all going to be super fun. But yeah, the assaults are just, they're very standard. Clearly, the people who are, at Shadowlands, clearly they're working on Shadowlands. I mean, something like Assaults does not come out if, the team's really trying their hardest and putting all their resources into this. No, it's what they could do in the time that they had, and Shadowlands is obviously the focus. So there you go. I mean, I think my impressions are just like my review. It's a mixed bag, but visions are incredible, and I'm pretty sure the raid's going to be great, so I am going to be playing it. Anyway, let's talk about 835. So Ian was interviewed by Millennium. Now, when they asked him about 835, he initially kind of ignored it completely, but then later on, he did confirm that 8.3.5 is not currently planned. And I mean, generally, there's been a whole bunch of interviews for 8.3, and they really did feel like a lot of media training had went on there. They kind of didn't say that much, bar some fun speculation with old gods, which is kind of fun. But yeah, 8.3.5, it is not going to be a thing. Now, you might be thinking that I'm being really unfair to Blizzard because Ian said that it's not planned. So why would I say that it's been cancelled? Pretty simply, actually. In the data mining, there's a whole bunch of items, like way back in the initial 8.3 cycle, there was a whole bunch of data mine stuff where the strings were literally called 8.3.5, you know, like / item name or whatever. So 835 was clearly something that was like in conception at some stage. It is now gone. In theme with this video, we're going to speculate why. And not to surprise you, I think it's Shadowlands. I think they're focusing in Shadowlands. That does mean that, I mean, we're stuck with, you know, it's 8.3 until Shadowlands comes out. I do believe Shadowlands is going to be in beta within the next month and a bit, and I do think it's going to be releasing probably September, October. I don't think they're going to make August. I think that's pretty much what's going to be going on there. As for the cancellation of this patch, I mean, I understand it, right? If you have to choose between two things, it's extend BFA, do 8.3.5, take away from Shadowlands, or it's just deal with reality. BFA, it's not, you know, it's pretty mixed bag at best. Let's focus on Shadowlands. I'm going to say that if the dev team, you know, cut back on 8.3 resources and, you know, sort of cut 8.3.5 in service of making Shadowlands the best expansion it can be, I think that is the correct move. Now, as a consumer, it definitely does mean that our value proposition for World of Warcraft is decreased, right? Because less content is going to be coming out in the BFA cycle. And if that means that people, you know, unsub, then fair enough. I actually think it's better to take subscription hits now, such that Shadowlands is actually really good. And that's basically what's going on. I think, you know, the team's been behind schedule. There's clearly been struggles there. I think they're putting a lot into Shadowlands. Shadowlands looked pretty darn early at BlizzCon, let's be real. I mean, things like itemization were just not really that worked out. Normally they come out with a pretty solid plan in those things, or like a pretty concrete seeming plan. But, you know, not in BlizzCon 2019. That's just not how it went down. So I think that's what's up. It's probably the right decision, though. Now, also speaking of that interview, Ian also said very, very plainly, very clearly, that account-wide essences are off the table. Now, his delineation there was that, you know, account-wide access to content that you've unlocked in your main is an okay thing, but that, you know, account-wide essences are less of a thing. Now, there's a video that's going to be going up on the channel the next day or two that talks about the over-systemification of World of Warcraft and how I think that is one of the primary reasons that, you know, just making people not that hyped about the game these days. But yeah, account-wide essences, at least based on what Ian said there, are just off the table. Now, that said, if they see a decrease of user engagement and people are just, you know, they've got all this Black Empire gear in their bank, the BOA stuff, and then Blizzard are like, huh, they've got that Black Empire gear. I wonder why they're not sending it to their alts. You know, maybe it's just because of the essence system. I mean, from my perspective, it's like, I went on to raid bots, went on a blood mallet, I was going through the essences, and like one of the really good ones, it is from just killing a Shara a whole bunch. But the thing is, I wanted to start this patch on my Demon Hunter, on a new character, so even if I had done a bunch of progress on my Monk, which, by the way, I hadn't, but if I had, then, you know, starting off on my new Demon Hunter, I definitely would have felt a little bit gimped. So that's just unfortunate. Now, right now, for me, I'm not planning to do Mythic. I'm just doing Heroic, so I don't really feel like I need to have the best Essence setup in the world. I mean, hey, I got lucky with my second best bit of Corrupted gear, so I'm sweet. But yeah, that's the situation there. Personally, I actually do agree with most of what Ian says in terms of the philosophy behind what is or is not account-wide, but in this case, I'll say, imagine if one of the gold traits, or maybe the artifact weapon ability, came from defeating Gul'dan in Nighthold. That, I think, would not make that much sense, and I think that is effectively what they've done here, because the essences are the class design, the class changes of this expansion, and it's kind of tied to doing content. So I think that's an interesting thing, but we'll just have to wait and see. Personally, I think they should bite the bullet, make them account-wide, get players into their game, get more people doing more visions on their alts. Let's be real. Visions do not last for that long in your main, but if I can do like 3 visions a week in my main, 3 visions a week in my alt and feel a bit better about it, you know what? That's probably something I would do. Right now, though, Account-wide essences are a blocker to that for many players of this game. And with that covered, let's talk about the cinematics. So we did get a nice juicy cinematic to start us off. I joked about the bad dragon, if you get what I mean, but come on. Randuin, part of that was a bit weird because in Mists of Pandaria, Rathian was like 3 years old and Anduin was like, I'm pretty sure still a teen, so that is a bit awkward, isn't it? But hey, Rathian comes back, Anduin punches him in the face, and some players are confused. And you know what? Fair enough, because did Rathian literally, disenchant Varian at the Broken Shore? No. But is Gul'dan doing a whole bunch of shenanigans Rathian's fault? Absolutely. So the lore there, right, is that Rathian used Kairos in the Timeless Isle to, break Garrosh out of jail and then do the whole Iron Horde thing. Now, at the time, Rathian's only goal was to defend the planet against the Legion. And for him, that meant that, getting infinite armies of orcs through the Dark Portal from infinite timelines, that's a perfectly viable way of doing that. Just wipe out the Alliance and the Horde, have all these, 50 Grommash Hellscreams just defending against the Legion. That was his plan. Of course, in the process of shutting down the Iron Horde, well, we freed Gul'dan from the Iron Horde, right? It's what we did at the very start of the Warlords of Draenor expansion. Then, of course, the Iron Horde went south. Then, you've got Gul'dan, you've got the pact with Archimonde. Then, we defeat Archimonde. Archimonde tosses Gul'dan through the portal, and then he causes the Legion expansion to happen. So, I think it's maybe a bit of an exaggeration for Anduin to punch Rathian in the face because it's kind of not really what he intended. I suppose technically it is if he wanted Grommash and his boys to just, destroy the planet, but whatever. That is the lore there. Now, it also does make it pretty clear that Visions of N'Zoth is fairly literal. Yes, we do have these assaults going on, but for the most part, it's in our minds, be that the game having a whole bunch of bugs and making our Discord server actually lose their sanity, or, stuff in-game. And I think that's really most of it. Like, seeing N'Zoth was super cool, but there really isn't that much there in the cinematic to react to, in my opinion. I think the real crispy business is going to be in 1 week, right? When we get the End of Raid cinematic. I think that could set up a lot. And then also, if there is a Mythic-only cinematic, because I do believe there is a Mythic-only phase. And I suppose that also does tie into something that's kind of interesting. There's no 835, so is there a big epilogue to this expansion? Is there a bridge that takes us to where Sylvanas is in the BF or the Shadowlands cinematic? I don't know. Maybe that's something we'll see, in a later cinematic in this patch. So there you go. That's basically the cinematic. Let's move on to the final thing today, which is the cloak throttling. So basically, Blizzard have actually capped week 1 at rank 6 of your cloak, and then they're making it so that you can get 1 more rank per week. Now, that's kind of interesting, like 1 rank's, quest will open up per week. Now, what that means is that you can't really no-life the cloak that much. Your progress is going to be throttled. However, technically speaking, you can still game the system. But what that would mean that is if you failed 2 visions, got no upgrade material, well, you would get access to 3 visions next week, and you could fully catch up with other players in terms of your cloak upgrades. However, that said, technically speaking, it does now incentivize you to do as few visions as is possible, because if you bank up your coalescing essences, if you bank up your vessels to get you into the horrific visions, by I think it's rank 12 of the cloak, you end up needing to do a whole bunch of visions to actually get 1 week's worth of upgrades, such that it actually makes sense to stockpile that stuff now, and then you'll be able to jump ahead in progress when the time comes. So that's one thing you can do, but basically, yeah, they're trying to prevent a little bit of the no-lifing behavior that I suppose they don't want to have happen. Of course, though, some of the raiders are doing, they're doing like 1,300 islands this week. And I know that's not intended, but man, 1,300 islands, that's literally unbelievable. So, there you go. That is it for this absolute situation of a World of Warcraft news video. Yes, the patch is very buggy, but you know what? It was also kind of hilarious. We've got a mixed bag with the patch. Visions are great, though. My favorite feature, if they keep that stuff going, the people who design Visions, like, when it comes to that gameplay stuff, they've got it. Whatever it is, they have it, and it's really engaging content. Absolute hats off to them. That is what I want to see more of. So hopefully Blizz can, polish up these problems, fix the stuff, and then we can just, get into it. And then Shadowlands beta can roll around and we can kind of move on to the future. So let me know, how's this been going for you? I would love to see what your experience has been like. Have you been as cursed as my team were when we went through it? I'd love to know. But yeah, cheers, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.